Hey everyone, welcome to the Being Patient podcast. I'm Deborah Kahn, founder of Being Patient. When my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, I decided to use my skills as a journalist in a different way. Frustrated by the lack of information on science and the inability to get different expert opinions, I decided to quit my job at the Wall Street Journal to create a better platform for people impacted by dementia. We are a community where news and information is created by our team of journalists. We ask tough questions and we simplify the science so that anyone can understand. We don't only cover disease, but delve into the latest research on what it takes to keep our brains healthy. We invite the experts and ask your questions. Here's today's podcast. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you for joining Being Patient's live talk. And I'm Nicholas Chan, reporter with Being Patient. And today we'll be speaking with Keith Moreland about his diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's in 2018 at the age of 57. So Keith, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Keith, I want to start off our conversation with speaking about your service in the military first, because ultimately the neurologist who diagnosed you with Alzheimer's said the traumatic brain injury that you had from the military was a big contributor to Alzheimer's. So first, can you tell us a little bit about your military service and what you did when you were serving in the Army?
Yeah, sure. I was a mechanic in the Army. At the time, it was West Germany. As we all know now, it's unified Germany. But served over there from 78 to 81. We were on training maneuvers, and the vehicle I was riding in the back of it, rolled over. And when it did, my head and my spine went up against a 4x4 board, caught it kind of on the edge of it, actually. So wound up with a head injury and a spinal cord injury. And they tried to put me in the parts clerk position for a little while, but it wound up that I really just couldn't perform any of the regular duties that you're supposed to in the military, even though they made a lot of my regular duties lighter. So was wound up being medically discharged from the Army, which it's funny, I had just signed my re-enlistment papers, and he walked in my hospital room and he said, "All right, we're ready to send you home." Well, I thought he meant back to my unit. Okay, that's fine. I said, "When are they coming to get me to take me back to my barracks?" He said, "No, we're sending you home." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I hated it, but I've been able to do a lot and find a way still. So.
And were you referring to the officer in charge, the person who said, "We're sending you home"?
Yeah, I had gone back to the hospital. I had to do regular checkups. They would do CAT scans, different things with it. So I guess on the last CAT scan, they saw enough from it that they determined there was just no way I would be able to stay in. So they had them do the papers and everything. It was so far away, I had to always spend the night and all overnight. So that was when they had told me.
Right. And how did you feel when you realized that you had to be, medically discharged from
I was disappointed. I mean, my father had served, my grandfather had served, and I mean, it's just kind of like that was, an honorable part. My uncle, matter of fact, he was shot down in the Korean War while serving. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm coming back home before I could even serve a full term of enlistment. So it was disappointing to me.
Right. And so your uncle, was he in the Air Force? You mentioned that he was shot.
In the Air Force, yeah.
Got it. So, ultimately, eventually you became a financial analyst at a large corporation. Can you tell us a little bit about, that journey, from the transition from the Army and then to being a financial analyst? I know you did other things between.
Yeah, well, I went back to college after I got out. I used my benefits, got a degree in business, and decided when I graduated, I didn't want to work behind a desk. I know, sounds crazy, but so I became a trucker. A friend of mine that I grew up with, me and him were buddies ever since we were kids. His dad worked in the business, so went to work for him. But after a few years, decided I didn't like that kind of life, so I went back to working in the finance business. Eventually became a financial analyst for a company that's, matter of fact, they're the largest consumer products manufacturer in the world, and wound up serving with them until I was wound up having to retire back in 2019 with my disability.
Right, got it. And at that job, was that when you started to experience, the early symptoms of Alzheimer's?
Yeah, well, we were going through some changes at the work. We added an office. Uh, we added a brand new distribution center. Even in 2018, we were still pen and paper. We had not changed over to electronics. And so they were changing everything over. And just to give you an example, 2017, the only day I took off was Christmas Day. I worked 364 days that year. Started noticing I was having some problems concentrating. My job was, I was specifically in charges of shortages. Say if a company ordered something and then they said, well, we didn't get blah, blah, blah parts, or this is not the exact model we ordered. It was up to me to find out why. What happened? Did we mess up? Did they mess up, or what? And started having problems with being able to keep track of everything. Every week I had to give a report to the presidents, vice presidents, CFOs, and senior management every Friday. And even just doing the reports, doing the spreadsheet and stuff, I was having a hard time doing. So I went to my boss and I was like, okay, something's going on. Something's not right. And she was like, oh, you know what? We're under a lot of stress. We're working a lot of hours. Don't worry about it. Things are going to ease up. We're going to open up the distribution center. Yeah, it's going to be great. And it wasn't. It didn't get better. And that got scary. And then that was in 2018 when I finally wound up having a seizure in May. And of course, they wanted to know what was going on. What was happening with it. So of course they did the MRI, CAT scan, blood work, all of that stuff. And that's when they found not only the dementia, but they found to have NPH, or normal pressure hydrocephalus, at the same time.
And that's the buildup of excess fluid in your brain, right? That's basically what it means.
Yeah, it's just my body. Normally, you're able to drain the fluid down your spinal cord, goes into your body, and you go to the bathroom and get rid of it. And my body got to the point it couldn't do that anymore. So I've got they call it a valve, but it's just kind of an implant with the tube that goes down into my belly, and it helps to be able to do that.
Right. And was the seizure as a result of the hydrocephalus?
They're not sure. They think it was. They think there was a good chance that it was probably the buildup from it, but they never exactly narrowed down what it was. They're just kind of assuming basically from it.
Right. So, like you mentioned, right, like at work, some of the early symptoms was like having a hard time just tracking the work that you had to do, right? And like, how about like other aspects of your life, like at home or things like that? Like, were there changes too that like you noticed was was something was amiss?
I didn't notice it so much, but my wife did. I've lived in this area for years and years, and she said I started getting to the point that I would, as she called it, take the long way around. She said, you can't drive from point A to point B. You go this way, and it costs us an extra 5 minutes. I started noticing, and she did especially, that she was having to repeat things. It was like I couldn't grasp what she was saying. It wouldn't stick with me. So she'd have to repeat herself, or she'd have to say it in a different way. and find a different way to say what she was saying. So there was several things at home that was going on at the same time like that.
Right. And all these symptoms, I'm assuming, were probably symptoms of both the Alzheimer's and the hydrocephalus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, when the doctor, gave you the diagnosis of Alzheimer's and hydrocephalus, like how did you feel, and how did your wife feel about it?
I was frustrated. My grandmother, my mom's mom, her and all of her sisters had it. And for almost the last 6 years of her life, I helped take care of her. My mom went blind from diabetic retinopathy. I was the only child of my mom. So I had to help take care of both of them. And so I knew the path that you go down with it. I watched everything that happened with my grandmother. My wife, same thing. She saw the same thing in her grandmother and had helped to take care of her. So we kind of knew where we were headed down. But the thing that scared me was I didn't think there was any help for it, because the whole time I was in it, and my wife will tell you the same thing. The whole time she was dealing with her grandmother, nobody ever offered any help. No resources, nothing, no pamphlets. And what was even scarier, when I got the diagnosis from the neurologist, she said, okay, you have this, you have this. See my secretary on the way out to schedule your next appointment in 3 months. We'll do a follow up. Oh, by the way, here's this drug. They say it does pretty good for early onset. Good luck. Didn't give me any resources. So about 3 weeks before the diagnosis, I love road cycling. Absolutely love it. I have got a Cannondale Cat 8 Tiagra that I used to ride. I'll talk more about that later. But my vice president, one of the vice presidents of the division, had taught me into riding in this ride. It's called Ride to Remember. It's a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's. We do it here in South Carolina, where I'm located. And he had taught me into signing up. Well, having been down the Alzheimer's road with my grandmother, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And so 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed. A couple of weeks after that, I'm riding in the ride. And so the first day of the ride, it's got you wear like a little thing, and it's got your participant number and everything. And on the back of it, you can say, I'm riding for, and you put that person's name on there. So I put, I'm riding for me. Well, one of the people came up and said, you're riding for you. What do you mean? So I told a little bit about my story. Well, we get to the end of the day at the first stop, and she goes and grabs the program director from the Alzheimer's office and pulls her over there. She says, you got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy. That's the first I ever found about anybody, resources, help, or anything with being able to do it, because she started telling me about what they offer with Alzheimer's and the different programs that they have with it. So that was really the first I knew there was any hope in this. Otherwise, I'm not going to lie, it was one big pity party. Why me? And, oh God, what has happened? And, the usual things you do, just kind of normal with it. So it was a huge, and even for the first few weeks after that, it was still a huge pity party until, finally my wife looked at me and she said, why not you? She said, you're the one who can talk to a signpost. You're the one who can be a spokesperson. Why not you? Why can't it be you? And it was a wake-up call. So it's been why not me ever since.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, it's, for so many people, for a lot of people that we've interviewed have expressed, a similar sentiment as well about how, like, they didn't get a lot of support from their doctor about, the type of resources that they can receive after getting a diagnosis, right? And, there's a saying in the field that it's, diagnose and adios, and diagnose and adios, right?
Yeah. And I'm trying to change that. I go around to the medical schools here in South Carolina, and I speak with the students. They're third and fourth year students, and just really telling my story. as to what's going on, um, ideas about how to handle it when you have a patient that you've got to give them this news, or even you're treating them after the diagnosis has been given, and you can kind of see light bulbs going on for each of them. So I figure if I can change the attitude of them before they actually get out in the field and become doctors, nurses, whatever it is they're going to become with it, then make a difference now. And I don't have to worry about anybody breaking or changing the stigmatism down the road with it. Let's try to make a difference with it. And I hope it does. I hope it gets somebody to think differently when that patient walks through their door.
Right. And you mentioned your love for cycling, and we talked a little bit about this before the interview. Is now you've transitioned to riding from cycling to riding the tadpole trike. Can you tell us a little bit about why you've transitioned between the two, and and tell us?
Well, unfortunately, the MPH causes balance problems. The shunt has helped. It's made a difference with it, but there's still residual balance, and there always will be. Something that will get better, but it'll never completely go away. So we have a hospital that's about 10 minutes or so near me called Roger C. Peace Rehabilitation Hospital. They sponsor a what they call it, adaptive sports program. And basically it's people like me. Some are veterans, some are as young as, I would say, elementary to early middle school. And they kind of take the different sports and different activities you would do and adapt them. Like with me, I can't ride just a regular two-wheel bicycle. So now I'm on a three-wheel tricycle. Sits real low to the ground. Uh, they provide the equipment, trike, everything, helmets if you need it, the whole works. There's somebody who accompanies me on the ride. We've got the Swamp Rabbit Trail. It's an old rail to trail thing that they have here. And so I've got somebody who accompanies me on there. So I've got somebody who is, watching for me, being there if something happens, God forbid, and I need help with it. We also have things that we participate in other sports, like I do archery, I do fly fishing, I do sled hockey, which is a blast. And so it gives me ways to keep my mind active, to be able to do things, because that's the one thing, no matter what I've read, it says, do anything you can to keep your mind going and to learn new things, because it will help to slow the progression.
Right. And like I said before, right, like being around other people in a team sport like sled hockey, that's also very helpful and really nice too, right?
But not only that, just the socialization. This is a very isolating disease, and I mean, I've experienced it. Most of my friends, and I think part of it is they don't know what to say. It's kind of like, what do I say? How do I act around him? Well, I'm sorry, but I'm still Keith. Everything else about me hasn't changed with it. Yeah, there's some new things I have to deal with, but everything else about me is nothing different. And people stop coming around. They stop calling. I mean, I had like 400 or 500 people on friends, so to speak, on Facebook. That number's down to 200. Half of them had just walked away. The others I hear very little from. So it's a very isolating disease. I have talked to a lot of other people that live with dementia, and they have voiced the same thing. And I don't think anybody's trying to be mean. They're not trying to be cruel. It's just they don't know what to do. So rather than not have to figure it out, then they just move on and go elsewhere and hope they don't have to deal with it.
Right. And I mean, yeah, like same for us, right? A lot of people have said, friends, they start losing touch with friends because their friends just don't know like how to how to deal with it, with this new diagnosis, right? And I mean, what do you think then? Like, what would your advice be in terms of how friends can like figure it out with you? Like, what's a better way to approach it then, instead of just fading away?
For the person living with dementia, except that people are going to be different with it, they're not going to know what to do. Just sit down with people, and I've started doing that. Just saying, "Hey, I'm still me. Can we do?" And I'll call them up, say, "Hey, you want to go grab lunch, or you want to go out and do something or whatever with it?" And just show them you can still be you. Will I forget something? Will I get tangled in my words? I mean, shoot, I'm 60 years old next month. So, yeah, even just getting to this age, that happens. But just showing people you can still be there. But if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're dealing with somebody that's living with some form of dementia, just be there and be friends with them. Be supportive of them. Call them up and say, "What can I do?" Or and here's an even bigger, more important part. Call up the caregiver if they've got somebody who lives with them or comes over to chat with them, and just ask them, "Hey, do you need a break today, or can I come over and sit with whoever it is, and you can go whatever you need to do. Go just take a break, go run errands, do whatever you want to." That means a lot. That's a huge help. I mean, I love my wife. My wife loves me, but you run up under somebody all the time, and after a while, you can get on each other's nerves. So, just to be able to have that break once in a while, I think does really, really great.
Right. And Keith, I also wanted to give you a little shout out about the Huffington Post op-ed that you wrote, because, I thought it was such a beautiful message.
Thank you.
That, you convey to the audience is that, to really make you're gonna, like, your abilities will change and you're not gonna be able to do some things like before, but really try to make the best out of what you can still do, right? Like, yeah, I think that's such a beautiful message, an important one too, right?
Thank you. Matter of fact, I got offered a contract with them, so I'm now a freelance writer with them, and I've gotten back into writing. I loved doing it as a kid. I've written a couple of novels that I've published now under a pen name Stokey Lee, and I think that's helping my brain too, because there again, you have to do stuff and you have to think through the processes. I've got to think through the words, think through the methods. So I'm just trying to do stuff that'll keep my brain busy, keep my brain active with it, and plus if nothing else, show people, hey, world doesn't end. I mean, yeah, you make adaptations, but the world doesn't end when this happens. You just have to figure another way out to do it.
Well, thank you so much, Keith, for sharing your insights. Is there anything else you'd like to add and haven't asked you yet?
Nothing I can think of. Just get out there and go for it. Live your life and do, because you never know. I mean, with dementia, some people go fast, some people go slow with it. But while you can still go.
Well, thank you again, Keith. And for our audience, if you miss any part of this live talk, we'll upload a recording of this video to YouTube. And if you haven't done so yet, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter on our website. Thank you all for joining. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. For more information on upcoming interviews, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at beingpatient.com. That's beingpatient.com. And send us any feedback you may have, whether it's someone you want us to interview or any comment about our podcast series. You can do so by emailing info@beingpatient.com. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'm Deborah Kahn.